Welcome to the stage of history. Namco's Soul series are undeniably some of the best and long-lasting fighting games. Before the series were known as Soul Calibur though, there was an arcade game called Soulblade, which I was lucky enough to play back then when my cousins invited me to check it out in the arcades. I remember they were like, Alex, you gotta check it out, man, there's this guy named Voldo that does that punch like Van Damme. That's all I needed to hear. The game was really impressive when I played it for the first time. Soulblade was later released on PS1 under the name of Soulblade, and it's the one I'll be talking about in this episode. Before we proceed, I would really appreciate if you support my channel by clicking that little subscribe button. What can I say about this game? It's freaking amazing. The number one big difference between Soulblade and any other big popular fighting games of that time was that Soulblade had a weapon-based fighting system. This, combined with the amazing cinematic music and the story being set in 1583 instead of modern times, gave the game a really distinct identity that stood out from the rest of the fighting games. When you start the game, you get to see one of the most epic and memorable intros on the PS1 console and video games history ever. It's almost impossible to skip the intro of Soulblade. The kick-ass music and the cinematic scenes give you that adventurous vibe that you can't resist. But apart from great visuals, sound and gameplay, a fighting game needs to have great characters, and Soulblade definitely excels in this department. Let's have a look at the roster. There are several characters to choose from, each one with their own unique weapon, fighting style and personality. All of them are traveling the world on a quest to find the legendary weapon called Soul Edge to either gain more power or to destroy it. We've got the samurai Heishiro Mitsurugi, who uses a katana sword, the assassin Li Long, who fights using the nunchaku with blades, Song Mina, who wields a naginata, Hwang Song Kyung, whose weapon is a sword, the demon hunter ninja Taki with her kodachi blade, the iconic Voldo with his katars, the Greek warrior Alexandra Sophia, who is using a sword and a shield, the young knight Siegfried Schaufen, who has a very big sword, the rock, who fights with a giant axe, and the pirate Cervantes de Leon, who possesses the Soul Edge that all the other characters are trying to find. Additionally to that, you can unlock few extra characters. Those good old days when you could buy a complete game and the only requirement for you to unlock the extra content was actually how good you were at it and how much time you would spend playing it. The additional characters are the final boss of the game, Soul Edge, who is an incarnation of the evil spirit of the weapon Soul Edge. Song Mina's father, Song Hamnyong, who, like Hwang, uses a sword. Siegfried with exclamation mark is an alternative skin for Siegfried from his bad ending when he is possessed by Soul Edge. Sophia with exclamation mark and Sophia with two exclamation marks are alternative skins for Sophia. I love all the characters in this game as they are all so unique, but my favorites would be Mitsurugi, Song Mina, Taki, Li Long, and Hwang. Taki is really fast and agile, and she has great kick attacks, plus she's a ninja. I really like the katana as a weapon, so I kind of naturally gravitated towards Mitsurugi. He's also very fast and has great combos. What can be cooler than a nunchaku? Li Long was one of the characters that really stood out for me. It was quite impressive seeing the nunchaku in a video game. I really liked Li Long and was a bit disappointed when the developers decided to replace him with Maxi in the later games. I really don't get why they did that instead of developing Li Long's story. Note that the name of his weapon in the game is changed to 3-section staff due to the nunchucks being a very controversial weapon in the Western world. Song Mina is a little girl with a big sword, and she is fantastic to play as. She has a very flashy fighting style based on Chinese wushu and she can deal great damage. She has a great balance of weapon and kick attacks. I've always been a fan of wushu movies, so I instantly liked Hwang's style. Hwang has a couple of similar strikes with Mitsurugi, and he shares some kicks with Song Mina, which makes him a well-balanced character. His fast and flashy style is right up my alley. Unfortunately, just like Li Long, Hwang was pushed aside by the development team and replaced with Yong Song. The gameplay seems to be something between Tekken 2 and Tekken 3 at first. The characters are fighting in a 3D environment and are able to do sidesteps like in Tekken 3, but they can also jump ridiculously high like in Tekken 2. Once you start playing it though, you'll discover that the attacks are very different from Tekken and will remind you more of Virtua Fighter. Instead of each button being assigned to each limb of your character, like in Tekken, in Soulblade the buttons are representing different types of attacks. The vertical attack, the horizontal attack, kick-in attacks, and block. Combinations of these buttons will allow you to execute combo attacks and throws, as well as the critical edge attacks. Critical edge attacks are very powerful combos that deal great damage but also deplete your blocking bar. They were something different compared to games like Tekken and Mortal Kombat. Think of them as something like the early stages of super blows like the Mortal Kombat Fatal Blows, for example. What I've always hated about the critical edge attacks is the input of buttons required to perform them. Soulblade has a similar system with Tekken when it comes to the rotational buttons when executing certain moves, like 90 and 360 degrees rotations. This type of input is not really easy to execute and you'll find yourself failing to execute this type of moves many times, and that makes these moves a bit unreliable and inconsistent. Critical edge attacks are split in two halves and most of the time you'll fail to execute the second half. It might work better with a classic arcade controller and button layout, but with a PS1 controller it's a pain in the ass. Blocking too many of your enemy's attacks will result in your blocking bar to be depleted, which eventually will result in you losing your weapon and continue the fight with your bare hands and feet. The weaponless fighting style is the same for all the characters though, and is really basic. I just wish they would have added more attacks to it, but it's still a nice idea that gives a bit more realism to the fights. If your character and your enemy strike at the same time, it will result in a weapon lock. In this case, whoever executes the right attack will have the advantage. In contrast with, let's say, Tekken 2, where you never reach the end of the arena, Soulblade rings have limits, and you can even throw your enemies out of the ring. If you throw your enemy out of the ring, you automatically win the match, even if your enemy's life bar was fuller than yours. You have to be careful though, as your enemy can also throw you out of the ring. The PlayStation version includes several different modes to play, similar to Tekken 2. There's a classic arcade mode where you can watch cutscenes once you beat it. The cutscenes can be altered by inputting the right buttons at the right time, giving each character two different endings. The sub-boss in the arcade mode is Cervantes himself. It can get quite frustrating fighting him, as his attacks are really powerful and have long reach, and he anticipates most of your moves. After you defeat Cervantes, prepare to face the final boss, which is the evil spirit of the Soul Edge Blade. Soul Edge is Cervantes on overdrive. This asshole made me curse many times. His vertical and horizontal special attacks deal a lot of damage and will piss you off. I suggest you adjust the difficulty level on easy, otherwise it's not fun fighting against them too. There's also a practice mode and a VS battle mode, as well as some time-wasting modes like team battle, survival mode and time attack. The real juice of the game though is the Edge Master mode. Edge Master can get extremely difficult and frustrating to a point where it's not fun anymore. Most challenges here can only be won by pure luck, literally. Some enemies are seriously overpowered, and the AI is even worse than in Mortal Kombat 2. You need to take advantage of the attributes of the different weapons that you earn during your journeys. Different weapons have different attributes like stronger blocking, damage dealing, or speed. But even that won't help you much. Most of the enemies can only be beaten under certain conditions. Some can only take damage while in the air, some can only be beaten with a throw, sometimes you need to beat multiple enemies at the Colosseum arena, and so on. Like I said, this mode is hardcore. What pisses me off is that after beating Cervantes and Soul Edge, who are extremely difficult in this mode, you still don't get the final weapon and you need to return to the previous areas in order to find it. This is really time consuming and it can make you lose your interest. It took me over a month to finish the Edge Master mode, and there were many times when I came very close to break every f***ing thing in my flat. But despite the batshit crazy difficulty, there are some positive things too. Edge Master serves as the story mode of the game, and you can find some info about the characters and the lore by reading the journal. I gotta say, I kinda enjoy that. Back then it made my mind travel around the world through history alongside the characters of the game and sort of live their adventures. One of the best things in this game is the absolutely amazing soundtrack. starting from the intro song that you can never skip. The music is really one of the most important elements in Soulblade that creates a really captivating atmosphere and sets up the tone. First off, the characters have their own stages. Each stage has its own music that represents the character's personality, like the fast and aggressive music in Taki's stage, which gives you that vibe that shit's about to happen, and it really matches with Taki's fast ninja fighting style. Song Mina's theme gives you the idea of her youth and her being a naughty rebellious girl, and Li Long's theme reminds me a bit of the theme from Bruce Lee's Way of the Dragon. Li Long, of course, would be the Soulblade representation of the Bruce Lee element. The music at the Colosseum stage, where you fight against multiple enemies, creates that vibe like you're fighting for your life. There is also another variation of the game's soundtrack, the Khan Super Session, which you can choose in the options menu. The Khan Super Session is as amazing as the original soundtrack. It's hard to decide which version is my favorite, and it's difficult to choose which music track I like the most, but I'll try. Apart from the obvious choice, which would be the intro theme, I really like Li Long's Moonlight Shadow theme from Khan Super Session, Song Mina's main theme, and Oath and the Sword theme. Damn it, it's hard to pick a few. Although back then the graphics looked great, they are really outdated by today's standards and would only appeal to those who like retro gaming like me. The graphics look a lot better playing it on a retro TV. The new HD screens really make the retro games like this one look 10 times worse than they actually are. The movements of the characters seem tighter than my thumb though. The controls are overall quite responsive and the game is quite fast, I would say. Faster than Tekken 3, but slower than Mortal Kombat 4. Well, no fighting game is faster than Mortal Kombat 4 anyway. Back then I found it to be a great alternative to mega beasts such as Tekken and Mortal Kombat. It has some of the best soundtracks in the history of video games, and it has some of the best gameplay amongst fighting games too. Every character is distinct and has a personality. The game has a huge lore, which I think is really important for a fighting game, in order for it to get you hooked and be remembered in time. It might sound weird, but to me fighting games are not just about fighting. I wanted to know why these characters are fighting at all and what are they fighting for? Fighting games with rich lore like Soulblade can be great portals to different worlds if you want to escape reality for a while. I think Soulblade is one of the best fighting games in the history of fighting games. I also consider it as one of the greatest PS1 games of all time and a must-have for any retro gamer. I have the best memories of this game. It really made me feel as if I was a part of its world while playing it. Thanks again for watching another episode of My Virtual Toys. My name is Alex and this was my review on Soulblade for PS1. Feel free to leave your comments below, don't forget to check out my other videos, subscribe, and see you next time!